Shalom, welcome to Rob on the Rock. I'm Rob Van Huff, and this week's Torah portion, Vayishlach, it extends from Genesis 32 to 36, roughly, is about Jacob returning from Padan Aram, having served his uncle Laban, and is coming back into the Promised Land. And what we're looking at here is a manuscript, not from Qumran. It's still considered Dead Sea Scrolls because it's from the Judean desert more broadly. But this is not a Qumran text. This is from Wadi Muraba'at. It's much further south along the west side of the Dead Sea. And what we see here is a black and white image that's very lovely. As you can see, we see a huge upper margin. Like look at this big upper margin here, and sadly it looks like worms have eaten it all through these little bits here, and then it comes down, and sadly it's torn and missing all this text here. So what can we look at it? What can we notice about it is that this must have been the upper line, obviously, right? If this is a roll of leather, and we have such a nice upper margin, we know this here, this text that we're looking at here and here, is the top line. And the text, we'll just look at our English here, is Genesis 32:3, so right at the beginning of our Torah portion. Then Jacob sent messengers ahead of himself to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, and then that's the section here that we're going to look at. And then the next bit, 32:29, Jacob asked him and said, "Please tell me your name." That's what we're going to look at here. And that's when, of course, Jacob is given the name Israel. So 32:3, what I have in bold here is the text. So we're going to see Jacob, and we're going to see part of the word messengers. Actually, I made a mistake here. Jacob's not in there. Jacob's in the next line. Messengers ahead of himself to his brother Esau. That's what we're going to see. And then we do see Jacob here in that next line. Please tell me. So let's look at the Hebrew here. I'm going to zoom in. And my guess is that this began, perhaps even this Torah portion, Vayishlach. So it's what we see here is I bet everybody, each one of you knows what letter this first letter is here. What letter is that? Well, it's the same letter as this. A lamed, the same letter here. So this is a lamed. And we know this is probably this is a mem sofit and a yod, and this is the top of a letter kaf. And then this is an aleph right here. Do you see we have an aleph here? Well, it's the same letter here. And what we don't see is a mem. That's right here. Malachim. So this is that word messengers. So Jacob sent, I'm going to change a different color here, and we'll write above. We'll go purple. So this is, or I'll write right below it here. Mem, lamed, aleph, kaf, yod, mem. That's this word messengers, or it's the same word translated angeloi, angels, right? Jacob sent angels, or malachim. In the Bible, malachim, as with all the words, whether it's Elohim, malachim, right? These are names that can refer to humans or non-humans. But here it says he sent malachim lefanav. So that's pretty clear Hebrew, isn't it? Look at that. We have lamed, pei, nun, yod, vav, lefanav. That means before him. He sent messengers before him. And then our next word here is el. That's the preposition to. And then the next word here, ayin. Now there could be a sheen or a seen, right? The later Masoretes put what we call a diacritical mark on there for us to know, but we know it's Esav. That's the word. So this is to Esau. And then we have another aleph chet. The chet's kind of broken, but you can see it here. Yod Vav, which is his brother, his ach. An ach is a brother. So Jacob sent messengers, lifanav, before him. To Esau, his brother. So this is, remember, Hebrew, we start on the right and we move left. There we go. So this is Genesis 32. And then it continues on, and then we get to this over here where we just see the name Jacob. Right? Look at that. It's beautiful Hebrew writing. Yud, Ayin, Kof, Bet. So that's Jacob. And then we have Vav, Yod, Aleph, Mem, Resh. And he said, and then we have Hagidah. So this is Hey, Gimel, Yod, Dalet, Hey, which means tell. And then we see part of what a nun and an aleph here, which would look like this. It's like tell, please. Hagidana. Hagidana. So this is like, please tell, please. Shmecha, your name. And the Shmecha here probably is the top of these letters, something like this. Tell, please, your name. So the verb asked, Vayishal, would be the last. So if we imagine this whole column on the right going all the way down, all this text, the very last word most likely was Vayishal. And he asked, and then you go up to the next column, Yaakov. That means, and Jacob asked. So often in the Hebrew Bible, when we have an action by a certain actor, we often get the verb first. Vayishal Yaakov means, and Jacob asked. Whereas in English, we put the subject first. Jacob asked. But in Hebrew, you would say, and asked Jacob. But Jacob is not the object there, but the subject. And asked Jacob, Vayishal Yaakov, but we would translate that as, and Jacob asked. Well, there you go. So this is a text with beautiful Hebrew writing. Sadly, we don't have much of it preserved, but it is very skillfully written. And again, this is not from Qumran. Oops, Qumran. I don't know how to spell Qumran. Not from Qumran, but rather from a cave way down on the western side of the Dead Sea. And that this reflects precisely, I know that we only have very little bit of text here, but this is precisely what we have in the Masoretic tradition of the text. And that's most often the case. The Hebrew texts of the Bible that come from non-Qumran Judean desert are very, very tightly tracking with what we have from the later Masoretic tradition. Whereas Bible texts from Qumran, from the Dead Sea Scrolls, tend to be all over the place. There's no scribal oversight. Some suggest this is because the Qumran community did not have as a religious value copying letter for letter of a text, because for them, the central religious experience or desirable religious importance or stress was on fluidity of prophecy, so the prophetic utterance. And so they would retell Bible stories and change words, change the story around, because they viewed it, the person who was speaking in what they thought was a prophetic spirit had the authority over the written text. Whereas from the Masoretic text, it is a different cultural value system that does not want to allow anything to change, but to preserve the text as it was received. So there we go, Parashat Vayishlach. If you are enjoying learning with Rob on the Rock, I'd encourage you to contribute and support the work through the PayPal link that is provided here. Shalom.